I moved into my daughter Brianna's house thinking I had found a safe harbor after losing my husband. But to her and Jason, I was nothing more than a burden, a ghost to be swept out of sight. The day they handed me a stack of glossy retirement brochures, smiling like they were doing me a favor, I smiled back. But inside, I started counting every wound, every humiliation. They thought they had ended me. They had no idea they had just woken something I had buried long ago. I still remember the slam of that heavy oak door. Jason laughed, loud enough for the whole brunch table to hear. "Bad omen," he joked, nodding at me like I was a rotted piece of fruit they were too polite to throw out. At least not yet. Since Samantha moved in, it's been nothing but death and debt around here. My heart stuttered. Brianna, my only daughter, nervously laughed along. She didn't even look at me. Not once. I sat there holding my coffee cup, stone cold now, feeling the heat rise up my neck. They think I'm a burden. They think I bring ruin. After all I'd given? My hands trembled under the table, so I clenched them into fists, hidden in my lap. I shouldn't have been here. I knew it. Ever since David, my husband of 33 years, passed, I'd been floating. No anchor. No home that felt like mine. So when Brianna said, "Come stay with us until you're ready," I believed her. Stupid, right? You'd think a woman my age would know better. Their house was big. Bigger than anything David and I ever had. Shiny marble floors, one of those kitchens that looked like nobody actually cooked in it. Everywhere you turned, white orchids and gold accents. Expensive. Cold. I stayed tucked in the guest room at the far end of the hall, a tidy little space Brianna called the transition suite, like I was some college kid who'd eventually leave the nest. Except every day I felt it, the invisible eviction notice ticking like a bomb under my mattress. Then came the intervention. It was a Tuesday. I was at the sink, washing the brunch dishes they'd left behind, like always, suds up to my elbows. Jason clinked his mimosa glass with a spoon. "Family meeting." I wiped my hands and turned around. There they were, perched like judges at the kitchen island. Brianna smiling too wide. Jason smug, practically reclining like a king. They handed me a folder, no, a stack, of glossy brochures. "We did some research," Brianna chirped. "Retirement homes, great amenities, pools, bingo nights." She said it like she was offering me a Caribbean cruise. The plastic, pitying look on her face made me sick. "We just think it's time," Jason added, swirling his drink. "The energy in the house has been off. Energy, like I was mold growing on their polished marble." I stared at the brochures in my hand, water dripping from my sleeves onto their perfect floor. And right then, something inside me shifted. My anger simmered. I smiled tightly. "I'll think about it," I said, my voice as even as I could make it. But inside, oh, I was taking notes, all right. Every humiliation, every cruelty, filing them away for later. Later that week, it got worse. I came home from the grocery store, arms full of fresh bread and Brianna's fancy imported olive oil, and the key wouldn't turn. They changed the locks. Without telling me. I stood there in the humid August air, sweat dripping down my spine, the neighbor's sprinkler ticking away like a mocking clock. I called Brianna. Straight to voicemail. "Jason?" Straight to voicemail. Finally, a text popped up. "Hey, Mom, we thought you needed some space to think. Call us when you've made a decision about the retirement options. Love you." Love you. Right after locking me out of their lives like I was yesterday's trash. I slept in my car that night. The seat wouldn't recline properly. My neck ached. My hip throbbed. Somewhere around 3 a.m., I curled up under an old beach towel and stared at the blinking streetlight, feeling every bit of my 59 years. Then came the cruelest blow. 2 days later, I got a text from Brianna. "Hey, Mama, thinking of you. Hope you're safe. Red heart." My heart cracked open. I replied. Poured my soul out into that tiny blue message bubble. Told her I was scared. Tired. Still loved her, no matter what. I watched the dots wiggle. She was typing back. Then nothing. Silence. Hours later, a random group chat notification buzzed on my phone. Curiosity got the better of me. I clicked. There, among a sea of laughing emojis, was a screenshot of my desperate text. Captioned, Poor thing still thinks we care. Tears of joy, tears of joy, tears of joy. Brianna. My daughter. The baby I'd nursed through chickenpox, sat up with through nightmares, scraped pennies together to send to college, mocking me to her friends, making me into a joke. My chest tightened. The phone slid from my hands onto the cracked leather seat. They were laughing at my pain, at everything I'd ever sacrificed. My grief hardened into something else that night. Not sadness, not confusion, resolve, pure and sharp. Because if they thought they'd thrown me away for good, they hadn't seen the last of Samantha Hills yet. I spent the next few nights parked behind Rosa Beckett's house, sleeping in the back seat like some lost stray. Rosa, bless her heart, was the kind of woman who never needed to say much. She just looked at me, really looked, and said, "Come in, honey, you're not done yet." Not by a long shot. Her little house smelled like cinnamon rolls and old paperback novels. I sat at her cluttered kitchen table one evening, sipping lukewarm coffee, feeling the weight of my life pressing down like a sodden quilt. "They took everything, Rosa," I whispered. "Everything David and I built." Rosa's eyes glittered, sharp and steady. "Maybe, but you still got you." She leaned closer, voice dropping low, almost conspiratorial. "And I reckon you got more up your sleeve than they ever bothered to find out." My chest tightened. She didn't know how right she was. The next morning, I decided it was time. I drove across town to the storage unit David and I had rented years ago. Dust coated the latch. It creaked when I lifted it, the metal biting into my palms. Inside, it was like stepping into a frozen past. Boxes stacked neatly. His old army trunk. A framed photo of our first little starter home. I wiped my hands on my jeans and got to work. Toward the back, tucked behind a crate of Christmas ornaments, I found a battered shoebox, tied shut with a piece of fraying twine. Written across the top, in David's unmistakable blocky handwriting, "For Samantha, when she's ready." My fingers trembled as I untied the knot. Inside was a single letter, folded carefully, and a key. The letter smelled faintly of pipe smoke and cedar. I pressed it to my heart before unfolding it. "If you're reading this, it means you've hit bottom, sweetheart. But you need to know, you were never meant to stay there. You've got a birthright bigger than either of us ever dared dream. Contact Leonard Cruz. Trust him. Love always, David." I sat back on the dusty floor, stunned. Leonard Cruz. I hadn't heard that name in decades. He was the lawyer David had once mentioned in passing, a friend of his late brother. Trusted, quiet, the kind of man you called when you needed something airtight and private. It took 3 phone calls and a trip across town, but I finally found Leonard. He lived in a modest little brick house now, tucked between a shuttered gas station and a Vietnamese bakery. He opened the door himself, peering at me through thick glasses before his face broke into a slow, knowing smile. "Samantha Hills," he said, stepping aside. "Been expecting you, just didn't know when." His living room smelled like lemon polish and old paper. We sat down, and he pulled out a thick manila folder from a safe bolted into the floor. "I made a promise to David," he said, sliding the folder toward me. "And to James Sterling." My mouth went dry. James Sterling. A name from another life. My biological father. The one my mother swore never to speak of. The oil tycoon whose fortune was whispered about in town like some kind of myth. Leonard laid it all out in patient, deliberate words. James Sterling had arranged, years ago, for a private inheritance, one meant solely for me, no strings, no public records, untouchable by anyone else. David had known. He'd kept it secret, waiting until he thought I needed it most. And now, I stared down at the paperwork. $4.7 million. Real estate, stocks, a trust fund, all in my name. I could barely breathe. Rosa had been right. I wasn't done. Not even close. I drove back to Rosa's that night, the folder sitting heavy in the passenger seat like a sleeping tiger. I parked under the weeping willow in her backyard and sat there for a long moment, staring out at the dark fields. They thought they broke me. They thought they won. I let a slow, fierce smile stretch across my face. Let them think that. Tomorrow, I would start the real work. Tomorrow, Brianna and Jason Malone would find out what happens when you try to bury a woman like me. They forgot, you see. I'm a Hills. And we don't stay down for long. The next morning, I woke up with a different kind of ache in my bones. Not sadness, not even anger, purpose. I got up before dawn, made a pot of strong black coffee in Rosa's ancient drip machine, and spread Leonard's documents across the kitchen table like a battle map. It was all there, the stock portfolio, the land deeds, the trust account details, and tucked between them, the phone number of a real estate agent Leonard highly recommended. Someone discreet, someone hungry, someone who didn't ask nosy questions. Exactly what I needed. Her name was Cassidy Ellison, and from the minute she answered the phone, I liked her. Sharp voice, sharper mind. When I told her what I wanted, a distressed property purchase, fast, quiet, no drama, she didn't bat an eyelash. Just said, "I'll find you the right one, Mrs. Hills. Give me 2 days." 2 days later, I met her at a downtown coffee shop. Cassidy slid a folder across the table. "Here's your jackpot," she said, tapping the front page with a manicured nail. Brianna and Jason Malone. Overleveraged. Missed 2 mortgage payments. Already flagged for pre-foreclosure. My pulse quickened. She flipped through the documents, each page another stone sinking into my gut. Turns out, after David passed, Brianna and Jason hadn't just bought that big, shiny house, they'd bled themselves dry to afford it. Refinancing. Personal loans. Maxed out credit cards. All to keep up appearances. All to live a life they thought they deserved. Their mortgage had quietly been sold off to a struggling local bank, desperate to offload bad debts. And thanks to Cassidy's connections, I could buy that note for pennies on the dollar. "Once you hold the note," Cassidy explained, her voice cool and professional, "you're essentially their lender. They miss another payment, you initiate foreclosure proceedings. It's legal, clean, untraceable." I stared down at the paperwork, at their names printed in black ink. Brianna Hills Malone. Jason Malone. The daughter who laughed while I cried. The son-in-law who locked me out like garbage. And now they'd answer to me. It took 3 days to finalize the deal. Cassidy moved fast, working late into the night. By Friday afternoon, sitting in Rosa's living room with a glass of cheap red wine in hand, I officially became the legal holder of Brianna and Jason's mortgage. I owned the roof over their heads. I could hardly believe it. I laughed out loud. A deep, cracked sound I hadn't heard from myself in months. Rosa, sitting across from me, raised her glass. "To poetic justice," she said, her eyes twinkling. I clinked my glass against hers, feeling the burn of the wine in my throat. To not being a damn fool anymore. The first missed payment came like clockwork. Cassidy called me, her voice brimming with satisfaction. "They missed again. It's time." She filed the foreclosure notice first thing Monday morning. 2 days later, Brianna called me. Blocked number, of course. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the screen. The easy thing would have been to ignore it. Let her stew. But I was done being easy. I answered, my voice smooth as silk. "Hello? Mom!" Brianna burst out, her voice shaking. "Mom! Oh my God! Something's happening with the house." I kept my voice neutral. "Oh? Yeah. We got this notice about foreclosure. Jason says there's some kind of lender we didn't know about. It's all so confusing." I could hear her panic rising, a shrill edge creeping in. They were scared. Good. I let her ramble for a bit before cutting in, my tone gentle but firm. "Maybe you should set up a meeting with your lender. Try to work something out." Yeah, she said eagerly. "That's what Jason said too. We're trying to track them down, but it's like they're hiding." I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "Don't worry, sweetheart," I said, savoring every word. "I'm sure they'll find you soon enough." Sure enough, the next morning, Cassidy arranged the meeting. A neutral lawyer's office downtown. Private conference room. No names. No hints. Just one line, on the invitation email. "Please come prepared to discuss settlement options with your lender." I made sure to arrive first, sitting at the heavy oak table with my back to the door. A thick file of documents neatly stacked in front of me. When the door creaked open, I didn't turn around immediately. I just listened. The shuffle of expensive shoes. The whispered argument, Brianna hissing at Jason to shut up and let her do the talking. The soft click of the door shutting behind them. Then, Silence. I turned slowly in my chair. Brianna's eyes met mine. Her mouth fell open. Jason went pale as a ghost. I leaned back in the chair, folded my hands calmly, and smiled. "Good morning," I said sweetly. "Shall we begin?" You could have heard a pin drop. Brianna's face twisted into something ugly. Shock, fear, pride, all warring inside her at once. Jason recovered first, puffing up like a rooster. "What is this?" he barked. "What the hell are you doing here, Samantha?" I tilted my head, voice honey sweet. "I believe we're here to discuss your debt." Jason's nostrils flared. "I don't know what scam you're pulling, but our lender is some company called Whitestone Holdings, not—" He stopped short. The realization hit him hard enough to knock the breath out of him. Whitestone. Hills. My married name, tucked neatly inside the LLC paperwork Cassidy had drawn up. Brianna swayed on her feet, her designer purse slipping off her shoulder. I stayed seated, stayed calm, let them squirm. The lawyer, an older gentleman named Mr. Jameson, who wore round glasses and had the patience of a saint, cleared his throat. "If you're ready," he said, sliding a document across the table, "we can review your options." Brianna sank into the chair across from me, her face drained of all that glossy, polished confidence she'd worn like armor. Jason hesitated a moment longer, then dropped into the seat beside her with a heavy thud. "Option 1, Mr. Jameson said, his voice mild, almost bored. "You may continue living at the property. However, effective immediately, your monthly payment will triple to reflect market rates and cover outstanding penalties." Brianna gasped. "Triple? That's robbery!" Jason slammed his palm against the table. "This is illegal." Mr. Jameson didn't even blink. "You're welcome to pursue litigation," he said smoothly. "However, given the chain of custody for the mortgage note, I assure you the courts would uphold it." He pushed another document forward. "Option 2. Vacate the property within 30 days. I sat quietly, watching them unravel. Brianna's hands fluttered helplessly in her lap. Jason's jaw clenched so tight I thought he might crack a tooth. I waited a beat longer, then finally spoke. "My preference," I said softly, "is that you stay." They both looked up, confused. I smiled. "Oh yes, stay. Struggle. Feel the walls close in a little more each month. Let every dinner party and Instagram post be shadowed by the knowledge that you're living on borrowed time and borrowed mercy." My voice sharpened, slicing through the thick, stagnant air. "Or you can leave. Tuck your tails between your legs and go. Start over in some tiny apartment you can barely afford. Your choice." Brianna's chin trembled. For a moment, the little girl she used to be flickered there, the one who used to run to me after a scraped knee or a broken heart. I almost softened. Almost. But then I remembered that text. "Poor thing still thinks we care. Tears of joy. Tears of joy. Tears of joy." And just like that, my heart turned to stone again. Jason leaned in, his voice low and venomous. "You think you've won, old lady? You think this makes you better than us?" I smiled sweetly. "I don't need to be better. I just needed you to learn what it feels like to be powerless." He shoved his chair back with a screech and stalked toward the door. Brianna followed, her heels clicking frantically against the tile. At the doorway she hesitated, turned back to me, eyes glistening. "Why?" she whispered. "You're my mother." I met her gaze head on. "No, Brianna. I was your mother. You made sure to kill whatever was left of that relationship." She flinched like I'd slapped her. Then she turned and fled after Jason, leaving the door swinging behind her. Mr. Jameson gathered the papers calmly. "Well," he said, adjusting his glasses, "that went better than most." I laughed. A real laugh, deep and shaking. It felt like shedding an old skin. "Thank you," I said, standing and smoothing down my jacket. "For everything." He nodded, offering a rare small smile. "Sometimes justice wears an unexpected face, Mrs. Hills." I walked out of that office into the sharp spring air, the city humming around me like a living thing. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small, I didn't feel unwanted. I felt free. I didn't look back. Not once. Because I knew this wasn't the end. Not yet. I still had one more gift to give them. One final nail in the coffin they built for themselves. And when it hit, it would be so clean, So absolute, they'd never see it coming. The eviction notice went out the next morning. Cassidy made sure it was delivered by a polite but unmistakably firm courier, a clean-cut young man in a sharp suit, holding out the envelope like it was a wedding invitation. I imagined Brianna's face when she opened it, probably pale at first, then blotchy, red with rage. Maybe she threw one of those overpriced vases across the room. A girl can dream. I didn't sit around waiting for updates. No, ma'am. While they were busy unraveling, I got busy living. I met Cassidy for lunch at a sunny little cafe across town, the kind with chip tables and bottomless coffee refills. "I found something you might want to see," she said between bites of her grilled cheese. She pulled out her iPad, tapping through photos until she landed on a listing. A craftsman-style bungalow, tucked away on a quiet tree-lined street. Wide front porch, stained glass windows, garden blooming out front like a painter's dream. And only 3 blocks from Brianna and Jason's doomed palace. I leaned in closer, heart skipping. It was perfect. Modest but proud. Like me. "I'll take it," I said without a second thought. Cassidy's eyebrows shot up. "Don't you want to see the inside first?" I just smiled. I've seen enough to know where I belong. The closing took less than a week. Cash talks. By Friday afternoon, I stood on the porch of my new home, a set of shiny brass keys warming in my palm. The air smelled like honeysuckle and fresh-cut grass. A breeze stirred the chimes Rosa had gifted me, making them tinkle sweet and soft. Inside, sunlight spilled across hardwood floors, touching everything with gold. I walked from room to room, fingertips grazing door frames, whispering promises to the empty house. "We'll make new memories here, you and me. Not a shrine to the past. Not a prison of regrets. A fresh start. And this time, nobody would be allowed to stain it." Meanwhile, across town, Brianna and Jason were scrambling. Cassidy, who had her ways of keeping tabs, filled me in over coffee. They'd listed the house on every rental site they could find, desperate to cover the ballooned payments. Open houses every weekend. Price drops every Monday. But the stink of foreclosure clung to them. Savvier renters knew to steer clear of unstable landlords. Nothing stuck, and the 30-day clock kept ticking. 3 weeks later, I got the call. Brianna's voice was barely recognizable. Hoarse, broken, pleading. "Mom," she started, then stopped. A hiccup, like she was trying to swallow her pride and choking on it. "Samantha," she corrected herself, voice stiff. We're moving out this weekend. Just wanted you to know." I let the silence stretch, heavy as a thundercloud. Finally, I said, "I hope you find a place that fits your needs." It was cold, colder than I'd ever been with her. But there was no anger left in my voice. No heat. Just finality. Brianna sniffled on the other end. I thought maybe you'd let us stay, you know? Family and all." Family. That word, it cut deeper than all her laughter, all her cruelty. Because now I knew exactly what family meant to her. Convenience. Comfort. Control. Not love. Never love. I cleared my throat, my voice steady. Family is supposed to lift you up, not tear you down. And with that, I ended the call. Simple. Clean. Done. The day they moved out, I parked across the street, tucked behind a row of wild lilac bushes. Watched as the moving truck bumped down the driveway, sagging with half-packed boxes and plastic-wrapped furniture. Watched Jason bark orders at the poor moving guys, while Brianna hovered nearby, looking hollowed out and small. They didn't even see me. And even if they had, I doubt they would have recognized the woman I'd become. Later, Rosa and I celebrated with a little champagne on my new front porch. The stars blinked above us, cool and indifferent, while the crickets sang back up. "Think they'll land on their feet?" Rosa asked, nudging me with her elbow. I shrugged, sipping from my glass. Not my concern anymore. She smiled, proud and sad all at once. "You finally chose yourself, Samantha." I leaned back, feeling the old porch swing creak beneath us. "About damn time," I said. And we swung there in the night air, 2 women who knew too well how the world could chew you up, and how sweet it tasted when you finally bit back. But deep down, one question still itched at the back of my mind, even as I sipped my champagne and counted the stars. Would they ever realize what they lost? Or was their greed so thick, their pride so deep, they'd just blame me for everything, until the bitter end. It rained the day after they moved out. One of those soft, steady drizzles that turns the whole world silver and clean. I sat by my bay window, watching droplets race each other down the glass, a fresh cup of coffee warming my hands. The old me would have been wringing her hands, wondering if Brianna and Jason had found somewhere decent to live, wondering if they needed anything, wondering if maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance to fix it. But that Samantha? She didn't live here anymore. Instead, I spent the afternoon unpacking boxes, humming to myself, feeling lighter with every photo hung and every dish put away. The house seemed to breathe with me, like it knew it was finally loved, finally chosen, finally home. I set up David's old armchair by the window, the one he used to call his thinking spot, draped a cozy quilt over the back, put his favorite side table next to it. Not a shrine, not a memorial, just a reminder. Love built me. Love didn't break me. A few days later, Rosa swung by with a basket of muffins and a stack of mail she'd collected for me. "You got something interesting," she said, tossing a thick white envelope onto the table. No return address. No markings except my name, scrawled in shaky handwriting I knew far too well. Brianna's. For a moment, I just stared at it, heart beating slow and heavy in my chest. Rosa must have seen the hesitation in my face. She reached across the table, squeezed my hand once. "No matter what's in there," she said, voice low and sure, "it don't define you anymore." I nodded, throat too tight to answer, slid a butter knife under the flap. Inside was a letter. And a check. The letter was short, messy, full of crossed-out words and smudges where tears must have fallen. "Mom, I don't know what to say except I'm sorry. We messed up. We let greed and pride and stupid dreams ruin everything. You didn't deserve it. You deserved better children, better gratitude, better love. This check, it's not enough. It's all we have right now. But maybe someday we can do better. Maybe someday we can fix what we broke. I love you. I'm sorry. Brianna." I turned the check over. $2,500. An apology in dollars and cents. My hands didn't shake. I didn't cry. I just set the letter down gently and sat back in my chair, staring out the window. It wasn't about the money. It never had been. It was about respect, about loyalty, about family. And you can't cash a check for those things once they're gone. Still, it meant something. A small first step. A pebble dropped into a frozen pond, cracking the ice just a little. Would I ever cash it? I didn't know. Maybe I'd frame it instead. A reminder that even broken people sometimes find their way back to the light, if they want it bad enough. Later that evening, Rosa and I sat out on the porch swing, the basket of half-eaten muffins between us. "You gonna forgive her?" Rosa asked, her voice casual but her eyes sharp. I didn't answer right away. The sun dipped low, painting the sky with bruised purples and molten golds. Finally, I said, "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting." Rosa nodded. "It's just letting go of the weight, huh?" "Exactly." I sipped my coffee, feeling the warmth seep into my chest. I'm not ready yet. Might not ever be. But I'm not carrying her mistakes on my back anymore either. Rosa clinked her coffee mug gently against mine. "To walking lighter. To walking lighter," I echoed. And we swung there in the cooling air, two women who understood exactly what it meant to lose everything and still find a way to stand tall. But even as the night wrapped around us, one thought stayed tucked in the back of my mind, stubborn and sharp as a thorn. If Brianna was truly sorry, would she ever have the guts to say it to my face? Or was this little check her way of wiping her hands clean, moving on without ever really facing what she'd done? Only time would tell. And this time I wasn't waiting on her doorstep with open arms. I had a life to live, a good one, one she was no longer entitled to be a part of. A week slipped by. Then, too, life settled into a new kind of quiet, the kind where you open your eyes in the morning and there's no dread sitting heavy on your chest. Just sunshine spilling through the curtains and the steady tick of the old clock David once fixed with his own two hands. I started tending the little garden out back, weeding, pruning, humming under my breath while my hands worked the soil. Funny how healing sometimes looks like dirt under your fingernails. Looks like sweating under the noonday sun, planting hope you might not even live long enough to see bloom. But you plant it anyway. Because that's what living means. Planting anyway. One afternoon, while I was wrestling a stubborn rose bush into place, Rosa came stomping around the corner, her sandals kicking up little clouds of dust. "You are not going to believe what I just heard," she said, fanning herself with a rolled-up gardening magazine. I leaned on my shovel, wiping my forehead with the back of my arm. "What now?" She dropped down onto the porch steps, still catching her breath. "Jason's been fired. Word at the diner is, he mouthed off to his boss one too many times." I blinked. "Fired? From that fancy management job he was always bragging about?" She nodded, grinning like a cat who found the cream. "And Brianna? She's working part-time at some pop-up boutique over by the strip mall, selling fake designer handbags to tourists." I let out a low whistle. From marble countertops and imported olive oil to minimum wage and polyester handbags, life had a way of balancing the scales when you least expected it. My anger simmered, not in triumph, but in a cold, almost surgical kind of justice. They'd mocked me for being bad luck, said I brought death and debt. Turns out, maybe they were the architects of their own misfortune all along. That night, I stood in my tiny kitchen, stirring a pot of vegetable stew, letting the rich scent of garlic and rosemary fill the house. My phone buzzed against the counter. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A long silence crackled across the line. And then, "Mom?" It was Brianna. Her voice so small, so unlike the daughter I used to know. I gripped the edge of the counter, steadying myself. "Yes? I didn't know who else to call." A shaky breath. "We're in trouble. Jason's unemployment check barely covers rent, and I'm not making enough to keep up." Silence stretched between us, thick as molasses. "And what do you want from me, Brianna?" I asked, my voice low. Another tremulous breath. "I'm not asking for money," she said quickly. "I swear. I don't know. I guess I just wanted to hear your voice." My heart twisted painfully. Because that was real. Not polished, not posed. Just raw, desperate human need. I closed my eyes. "You hurt me," I said quietly. "You broke something I'm not sure can ever be put back." "I know," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. "I know, Mom. I was awful. I was stupid. Jason, he made me feel like I had to pick a side, like I couldn't be your daughter and his wife at the same time." I leaned harder against the counter, the ache in my chest deep and familiar. "You always had a choice, Brianna," I said. "You just didn't choose me." "I know," she said again. "I know." And for the first time in years, there was no defensiveness in her voice, no excuses, just sorrow. We talked for a little while longer, about nothing and everything, about roses and rainstorms and old memories that tasted bittersweet on my tongue. She didn't ask to move back in. She didn't ask for a handout. She just wanted a sliver of connection, a single thread to tie herself back to the life she'd so carelessly shredded. When we finally said goodbye, I stood there for a long time, the phone still warm in my hand. The stew burned on the stove, forgotten. Later, sitting out on the porch swing, I watched the stars blur into a smear of silver overhead. Forgiveness didn't come in one big wave, I realized. It wasn't a switch you could flip. It came in slow, painful drips, one raw conversation at a time, one hard truth confessed without expectation of reward. It was 1,000 small choices. I will not harden my heart today. I will not hang up the phone. I will not let bitterness define who I am. But still, a little voice deep inside me asked the question I couldn't quite shake. Was Brianna truly sorry? Or was she just afraid of what life looked like, without someone to catch her when she fell? And could love, real love, survive, knowing it might never be repaid the way it deserved? Days drifted by like autumn leaves, slow and uncertain. Brianna didn't call again right away, and I didn't chase her. Instead, I built my life piece by piece, like a woman laying bricks after a fire. Small routines, small victories, morning coffee on the porch swing, phone calls with Rosa about nothing and everything, the stubborn little garden, pushing up green, shoots through the cold soil. It wasn't the life I used to dream about, No white picket fence fairy tale. But it was real. It was mine. One chilly Saturday afternoon, I bundled up and drove to the farmer's market. Rows of tents lined the town square, full of pumpkins and jars of golden honey. The air smelled like cinnamon and wet leaves. I was loading a bag of sweet potatoes into my trunk when I heard it. "Mom?" I turned, heart thudding against my ribs. There she was, Brianna, standing a few feet away. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, dark circles blooming under her eyes. She looked smaller somehow, less polished, more human. Jason wasn't with her. I didn't ask why. We just stood there for a long moment, the busy sounds of the market swirling around us like we were inside a snow globe. Finally, she stepped closer. "I come here every Saturday now," she said, voice shaky. "Guess it's cheaper than Whole Foods." I huffed a dry laugh before I could help myself. Some old reflex, some small flicker of humor we used to share before everything went rotten. Brianna's face crumpled. Tears welled up and spilled over, messy and raw. Right there, in the middle of the parking lot. "I miss you, Mom," she choked out. "I miss us." People walked around us, paying no mind. A woman in a purple scarf pushed a stroller by. Some kid dropped a basket of apples. Life kept moving. But for me, the world tilted and slowed, narrowing down to the trembling woman in front of me. I set the bag of sweet potatoes down and wiped my hands on my jacket. Stepped closer. Not touching. Not yet. "I miss what we used to be, too," I said. "And what we could have been." Brianna nodded hard, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I was stupid. I was selfish. I thought," she squeezed her eyes shut, like it hurt to say it, "I thought you'd always be there no matter what I did." A heavy silence fell between us. Then, softly, she asked, Would you ever want to have coffee sometime? Just to talk." My heart ached, because some part of me, the old part, the soft part, wanted to scoop her up and say yes. Wanted to erase every cruel word, every slammed door, every broken promise. But I couldn't lie to myself. Some wounds needed more than a coffee date to heal. I looked her in the eye, voice steady. "Maybe someday, Brianna? But it's going to take time." She nodded, shoulders sagging with the weight of it. "I understand," she whispered. For the first time in a long time, I believed her. We parted ways there in that damp, leaf-scattered parking lot. No promises, no grand declarations, just a fragile thread stretched between us, thin, trembling, but maybe strong enough to hold, if we both treated it with care. I watched her walk away, hugging herself against the cold, watched her blend into the crowd, until she was just another face among many. And for once, I didn't feel hollowed out. I didn't feel abandoned. I felt steady. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, a fresh cup of tea steaming in front of me. Rosa called, her voice crackling through the line. "You all right, Hon? You sound far away." I smiled a little. "Just thinking," I said. "About what?" I stared out the window at the dark sky, the stars hidden behind a heavy bank of clouds. "About how sometimes," I said slowly, "people think forgiveness is a favor you hand out like candy. But really, it's a mountain you both have to climb. Together." Rosa chuckled, warm and knowing. "And sometimes," she said, "you gotta climb it alone first, just to see if they're worth meeting you at the top." I let her words settle in my chest, deep and heavy. She was right. She was always right. I sipped my tea, the bitterness and sweetness swirling together on my tongue. I wasn't climbing that mountain for Brianna. I was climbing it for me. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I still wondered, would she climb too? Or was this just another thing she'd get tired of halfway through, leaving me to finish the hard parts alone? The next few weeks slipped by, slow and quiet, almost peaceful. I filled my days with simple things, planting late-season pansies, volunteering a few hours at the local library, where the air always smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner, learning how to make Rosa's famous buttermilk biscuits, a recipe that took 3 failed batches and 1 mild kitchen fire to get right. I wasn't waiting by the phone, wasn't holding my breath, wasn't building some fairy tale in my head where Brianna swooped back into my life, perfect and penitent. I was living. And if Brianna decided to find her way back, well, that was on her. It was a chilly Wednesday morning when I got the text. Brianna, hi Mom. Could I take you out to lunch this weekend? Just us. My treat. I stared at the screen for a long time, the phone growing heavy in my hand. I wasn't foolish enough to believe lunch would fix years of hurt. But maybe it could be a beginning. I typed back 2 simple words. Maybe. Sunday. No smiley faces. No gushing. Clear. Measured. Fair. Sunday afternoon. I pulled into the parking lot of a small cafe on the edge of town. Nothing fancy. A few picnic tables outside. Handwritten menus taped to the windows. Brianna was already there, sitting stiffly at a table, her hands wrapped tight around a chipped coffee cup. She stood when she saw me, awkward and uncertain, like a teenager facing down the principal. Hi, Mom, she said, voice soft. Hi, I answered. Simple. No promises. We sat down, ordered coffee and 2 bowls of vegetable soup, more out of nervous habit than hunger. For a long time, the only sound between us was the clink of spoons against ceramic. Finally, Brianna cleared her throat. I'm not here to make excuses, she said. Her hands trembled slightly, so she tucked them under the table. I wanted you to know I'm working now. 2 jobs, actually. Jason and I, well, we're not together anymore. Her voice cracked on the last word, but she soldiered on. I moved into a little studio apartment downtown. Nothing fancy. I'm making it work, though. I nodded, letting her speak, letting her lay her pride down piece by piece, like a woman unpacking after a long, painful journey. I think I lost myself for a long time, Brianna said after a while, staring into her coffee. I thought money made you worth something, made you safe. She shook her head slowly. But it doesn't. It just makes you scared of losing it. I sipped my coffee, the taste bitter but grounding. I don't need anything from you, Mom, she said, meeting my eyes at last. No handouts, no bailouts. She swallowed hard. I just want a chance to show you I'm trying to be better. My throat tightened, but I kept my voice steady. Words are easy, Brianna, I said gently. It's what you do that matters. She nodded fiercely, like she'd been waiting for that. I know. After that, the conversation got easier. We talked about silly things. The best grocery store deals, a terrible sitcom we both used to watch, laughed once or twice. Real laughs. Small, shaky, but real. When the check came, Brianna snatched it up before I could move. She paid in cash, her hand steady this time. No flinching. No hesitation. As we stood to leave, she hesitated again. I made you something, she said, fumbling in her bag. She pulled out a little crocheted scarf. Lumpy, uneven, one side longer than the other. Soft lavender yarn, the kind I always loved. I'm terrible at it, she said, cheeks flushing. But I wanted you to have something I made, with my own hands. I reached out, took the scarf gently, ran my fingers over the clumsy stitches, felt the shaky, stubborn love woven into every uneven row. Thank you, I said simply, and meant it. We hugged briefly, a quick, awkward thing, and then parted ways. No promises, no grand declarations, just 2 women starting over from the bottom up, one slow, painful stitch at a time. Later that night, I sat by the window, the scarf draped around my neck, the smell of lavender rising with the warmth of my tea. Outside, the first stars pricked through the inky sky. I thought about all the ways love comes back to you when you least expect it. Bent, battered, but still breathing. But somewhere deep in the hollow places of my heart, one last question lingered. Could love stitched together with regret and tears ever be strong enough to hold? Or was some fabric just too torn to mend? The lavender scarf hung from my coat hook for days after that. Every time I passed it, I brushed my fingers over it. Every crooked stitch seemed to whisper, she's trying. And yet, some part of me stayed wary, like an old dog that's been kicked too many times, sniffing the air before stepping forward. Trust, once broken, doesn't mend easy. Still, I didn't throw the scarf away, didn't shove it into some dusty drawer to forget. I let it stay where I could see it. A small, imperfect offering. A maybe. The days grew colder. Fall turned the trees to fire outside my windows. The porch swing creaked mournfully when the wind blew. Life settled into something steady and quiet. And Brianna? She kept her distance. Respectful, cautious. She sent small texts now and then. Little check-ins. Hope your garden's holding up against the frost. Saw a recipe for your favorite pecan pie. Want me to send it? No demands. No sob stories. No fishing for sympathy. Just reaching out, testing the waters, waiting for me to meet her halfway, if I wanted to. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel trapped by her reaching. I didn't feel obligated. I felt free to choose. One Sunday, Rosa dropped by with a basket of late tomatoes and a gleam in her eye. "Got a little something you might want to hear," she said, plopping down at my kitchen table. I poured us coffee, curious. "Spill it." She leaned in close, like we were two kids trading secrets at recess. "Word is, Brianna's been volunteering down at the community kitchen. Quiet like, no big speeches. Just rolls up her sleeves and gets to work." I blinked. "Really?" Rosa nodded, her mouth twisting into a half smile. "Peels potatoes, scrubs pots, serves soup. Every Thursday night for the last month." I sat back, letting that sink in. It wasn't performative. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't for me. It was for her. Her own soul, bruised and trying to heal the hard way. Maybe she really was climbing that mountain after all. That Thursday, without meaning to, I found myself driving past the community center after dark. I pulled into a corner of the parking lot and cut the engine. Sat there in the cold, watching through the big glass windows. And there she was, hair pulled back, no makeup, an old sweatshirt I vaguely recognized from her high school track days, laughing with a group of teenagers, handing out bowls of steaming soup to a long line of shivering folks, not posing, not bragging, just serving. And I realized, right there in that quiet parking lot, that maybe love doesn't come back to you the same way it left. Maybe it limps. Maybe it stumbles. Maybe it's stitched together with apologies and late-night soup ladles. But if you're lucky, it does come back, stronger, sadder, wiser. I didn't go inside that night. Didn't need to. Seeing her there, real, flawed, trying, was enough. I drove home under a star-punched sky, the radio humming soft blues, my heart quieter than it had been in years. Not healed, not whole, but hopeful. The next afternoon I texted her, 2 simple words. Good work. No gushing, no grand speeches, just acknowledgement. The way you tip your hat to a traveler you meet halfway up the mountain. Not because you owe them, not because you're weak, but because you recognize the climb. And because somewhere deep inside, you're still rooting for them to make it to the top. Later that night, as the wind rattled the windows and the kettle whistled low and lonesome on the stove, I wrapped the lavender scarf around my neck, sat down by the fire, and allowed myself, just for a little while, to believe that some broken things could be mended after all. Not perfectly, not easily, but enough. Still, one thought clung to me like smoke. When you stitch a family back together, what new pattern does it make? Was it stronger where it tore? Or forever marked by the places it had split wide open? Only time would tell. And this time, I was willing to wait. November settled over the town like an old, worn quilt. Cold mornings, brittle leaves crunching underfoot, wood smoke curling lazy in the sharp air. I started spending more evenings by the fire, a book open in my lap and the lavender scarf Brianna made tucked around my shoulders. Not because I needed the warmth, because I needed the reminder that some things you thought were ruined weren't. Not entirely. Brianna kept texting. Small things. A photo of a funny-shaped squash she found at the farmer's market. A terrible joke about turkeys before Thanksgiving. A picture of the first pie she tried to bake. Burnt to a crisp, but proud anyway. Each message like a small knock at the door of my heart. Not demanding entry. Just waiting patiently outside. I didn't answer every time. Some days, it was enough just to read them, smile a little, and move on with my day. Healing wasn't a sprint. It was a long, steady walk. And Lord, after everything, I was determined to take my time. Thanksgiving rolled around faster than I expected. Rosa and I made plans to keep it simple. Turkey breast, green bean casserole, a pie from the bakery, because neither one of us trusted our crusts anymore. No big family gathering. No parade of forced smiles. Just good food, a warm house, and the kind of company that doesn't make you earn your seat at the table. I wasn't expecting anything else. Wasn't hoping for anything else. Which is why, when the knock came at 11 a.m., I nearly dropped the sweet potatoes right onto the kitchen floor. I wiped my hands on a towel, heart hammering, as I crossed the living room, opened the door, and there she was, Brianna, standing on my porch, holding a battered foil tray and a small bouquet of daisies wrapped in brown paper. She wore an old gray coat and a knitted hat pulled low over her ears. No makeup, no jewelry, just herself. "Happy Thanksgiving, Mom," she said, voice small but steady. My throat closed up so fast I could barely breathe. I brought candied yams," she said, lifting the tray awkwardly. "They're probably terrible. I Googled the recipe this morning." I stared at her, at the yams, at the daisies trembling slightly in the cold breeze. This wasn't some grand performance. This wasn't about guilt or obligation. This was about showing up, messy, imperfect, honest, the way real family does. I stepped aside. "Come in, Brianna," I said quietly. "Come in and get warm." She smiled, small, uncertain, and slipped past me into the house. I shut the door against the chill, feeling something unfamiliar bloom quietly in my chest, something that felt a lot like peace. Rosa raised one eyebrow when she saw Brianna in the kitchen, but she caught on quick, just gave her a nod and handed her a spoon. "Mashed potatoes don't stir themselves," she said gruffly. Brianna laughed, a shaky little sound, and got to work. No long apologies, no dramatic declarations, just sleeves rolled up and hands busy. It was the best kind of mending. Quiet, steady, without a single needle or thread in sight. We sat down to eat around noon. The food was simple. The conversation even simpler. Old stories, bad jokes, long, comfortable silences, filled only by the clink of silverware and the occasional laugh. At one point, I caught Brianna watching me across the table. Not desperate, not scared, just hopeful, and I let my face soften, let my guard drop a fraction, because maybe, just maybe, some doors don't stay locked forever. Maybe, if the knock is patient enough, you open it again, even if your hand trembles on the handle. After dinner, we all sat around the living room, too full to move. Brianna curled up on the rug, Rosa in the armchair with a second slice of pie balanced precariously on her knee. I sipped tea, letting the warmth seep deep into my bones. And for the first time, in what felt like a lifetime, my house felt full again. Not with noise or chaos, but with something better. Hope. A hope stitched together out of broken pieces, clumsy apologies, and late-night texts. A hope that said, maybe the worst didn't get the last word after all. Still, as I leaned back in my chair, listening to the murmur of easy conversation around me, one thought brushed against the edges of my mind. Was it enough to rebuild love on a new foundation? Or were there still cracks lurking underneath, waiting for the next storm to tear it all apart? Only time would tell, and this time I was willing to find out, slowly, carefully, one day at a time. December swept in on a tide of icy wind and early sunsets. The town square lit up with white twinkle lights, wreaths in every window, the scent of pine and cinnamon weaving through the cold. I found myself humming Christmas carols under my breath while I dusted or folded laundry. Funny how hope sneaks up on you when you least expect it. Brianna didn't vanish after Thanksgiving. She didn't barge in either. She sent little messages. Invited me to a holiday craft fair one weekend. I said yes, dropped off a tin of lopsided sugar cookies with a sticky note that just said, "Tried my best, tears of joy." And every time she reached out, it was like another stitch tugged gently at the tattered fabric between us. Not perfect, but present. And after everything, presence mattered more than perfection ever did. One frosty Saturday afternoon, Brianna and I ended up at the local tree farm together. Rows and rows of pines and spruces, fat and fragrant, under a sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. Our breath puffed white as we wandered, hands jammed into pockets. "I haven't had a real Christmas tree since I moved out," Brianna said, her voice soft. "I used to love picking them out with you and Dad." I smiled faintly, remembering David's gruff way of pretending he didn't care, while secretly taking an hour to pick the perfect one. He'd knock on the trunks, shake the branches, squint at the tops like he was appraising fine art. "Your father took tree hunting very seriously," I said, laughing. Brianna laughed too, the sound genuine and full. It warmed something deep in my chest that I hadn't realized was still frozen. We found a squat little spruce not much taller than Brianna herself. Lopsided, a little sparse on one side. But it smelled like heaven and fit in the bed of my pickup truck without a fight. "Perfect," Brianna said, grinning. And for once, I didn't correct her. Didn't say it was crooked. Didn't say it was too small. Perfect was what you made it. Back at my house, we wrestled the tree into the old stand David had built years ago. Brianna strung the lights, clumsy but determined, while I dug through a box of dusty ornaments. Glass balls painted with snowflakes, crocheted angels, a tiny framed photo of Brianna as a toddler, grinning with 2 front teeth missing. When I held it up, Brianna's breath caught. She reached out, fingertips brushing the glass. "I was so happy then," she said, her voice breaking a little. "I don't know why I ever lost that." My heart ached, not from anger, but from an old, familiar tenderness. "You didn't lose it," I said, setting the ornament carefully on a lower branch. "You just forgot where to look." The tree wasn't magazine perfect when we finished. It leaned a little, the lights bunched up in one spot. But it glowed all the same, warm and messy and stubborn. Just like us. We made hot chocolate after, hands wrapped around the chipped mugs, marshmallows bobbing like tiny buoys. Brianna sat curled up on the couch, knees tucked under her, her face lit only by the tree's soft glow. "I'm not expecting you to forget everything, Mom," she said suddenly. "I'm not even expecting you to forgive me yet." She stared into her cocoa, voice low and steady. I hope someday, when you look at me, you don't see the worst thing I ever did. I hope you see someone who's trying to be better." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I blinked them back. Because this wasn't about my pain anymore. It was about the work she was doing. Work I wasn't forcing her to do. Work she was choosing for herself. And Lord, wasn't that all we could really ask of each other? That we try. That we keep trying. Even when it's messy. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. I set my mug down carefully, reached over and tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, just like I used to when she was small and sleepy and safe in my arms. And I said, simply, "I see you, Brianna. I really do." Her face crumpled. She buried it in her hands and sobbed. Big, ugly, gasping sobs. And I let her cry. Let her break wide open in the safety of my living room, under the soft, blinking lights of a crooked Christmas tree. Because sometimes, forgiveness doesn't come with a grand speech or a sweeping gesture. Sometimes it comes quietly, wrapped in the smell of pine and cocoa and the shuddering breath of someone finally letting go. Still, as I sat there, running a soothing hand down her shaking back, one last thought echoed inside me, soft and sure. Maybe forgiveness isn't about fixing the past. Maybe it's about building a future where both people can stand, battered but unbowed, side by side. After that night, something settled between us. Not perfect peace, not instant healing, but a kind of quiet understanding. Like 2 women standing on opposite sides of a broken bridge, hammering away with rough, stubborn hands to rebuild it, one plank at a time. No blueprints, no promises it wouldn't collapse again, just faith and work. We spent Christmas Eve together, just the 2 of us. No fancy gifts, no big production, just a simple dinner. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, a pie Rosa dropped off with a wink and a warning. "Don't you dare burn this one." Afterward, we sat by the fire with the old family photo albums cracked open on our laps. Yellowed snapshots, crooked smiles. Christmases, when Brianna was still small enough to sit on David's shoulders and squeal with laughter. Brianna traced the edges of one photo. The 3 of us in front of the town's old wooden sleigh, cheeks red, arms wrapped around each other. "I don't know how I forgot this feeling," she whispered. I didn't answer. There wasn't anything to say that she didn't already know. deep down where it counted. Instead, I reached over and squeezed her hand gently. And for the first time in years, she squeezed back. Christmas morning dawned, gray and quiet. A soft snow had fallen overnight, dusting the world in clean white. I woke early, padded out to the living room, and sat by the glowing tree. No presents underneath. No stockings hung. But somehow, it was the richest Christmas I'd had in decades. I pulled the lavender scarf Brianna had made around my shoulders, closed my eyes, and just breathed. Peace doesn't always come in triumphant bursts. Sometimes, it sneaks in on cat's feet, settles in your chest, and stays there quietly, stubbornly, against all odds. Later that morning, Brianna shuffled in, hair tousled, still wearing her wrinkled pajamas. "Merry Christmas, Mom," she mumbled, voice thick with sleep. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," I said, and meant it. She held out a tiny, lumpy package, wrapped in brown paper and tied with a bit of twine. "Made you something." I smiled and carefully unwrapped it. Inside was a little clay ornament, a heart, clumsy and uneven, painted a deep, shining blue. On the back, scratched in shaky letters, it said, "One day at a time." I stared at it, throat tight, ran my thumb over the rough edges. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't polished, but it was hers. It was real, just like this new version of us we were trying to build. We hung the heart on the tree together, right in the front, right where everyone could see. A marker, a promise, a scar and a blessing, tangled together. Later that afternoon, as the snow piled deeper outside and the fire crackled low, Brianna turned to me, chewing her bottom lip nervously. "I know I have a long way to go," she said. "I know one good Christmas doesn't erase everything." She met my eyes, steady and sure. "But I'm not giving up this time. Not on you. Not on us." I nodded, feeling something settle deep inside me, an anchor, gentle and firm. "We're both still learning," I said softly, "and that's all right. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to keep showing up." Her shoulders sagged with relief. She leaned her head against my shoulder like she used to when she was a little girl, all elbows and scraped knees and big dreams. And I wrapped my arm around her, pulling her close. Outside, the snow kept falling, soft and relentless, covering the world in forgiveness, in new beginnings. And inside, by the fire, two women sat side by side, stitched together by love, by grief, by stubborn hope. No longer mother and daughter torn apart by betrayal, but two souls choosing, every messy, painful, beautiful day, to find their way back to each other, one day at a time. Still, somewhere deep inside, one last whisper of doubt flickered. Could love built in brokenness be strong enough to last through the storms still to come? Or was this just a brief, beautiful calm before another fall? Only time would tell. And this time, we were ready to find out. Together. The spring thaw came slow that year. Little rivers of snowmelt trickled down the gutters, softening the hard edges winter left behind. Tulips poked stubborn green heads out of the frozen ground, bold and foolish and brave. Kind of like us. Brianna stopped by every Sunday now. Sometimes we cooked. Sometimes we just sat on the porch swing, sipping lemonade, letting the world hum around us. No pressure, no guilt, no pretending things hadn't gone wrong once. We carried the past with us, but not like a burden, more like a battered old suitcase. Heavy, yes, but filled with lessons we needed to remember. One warm afternoon, she turned to me, worry flickering across her face. "Do you ever wish things had been easier?" she asked. "That we hadn't had to go through all that pain?" I thought about it. About the nights crying into a cold pillow. About the slammed doors and sharp words and long silences. And I shook my head. "No, baby," I said. "Easier doesn't mean better. Easier doesn't make you strong." She smiled, a real one, wide and shining. And I knew she understood, really understood. That summer, we planted a garden together. Tomatoes, sunflowers, sweet peas, things that take time, things that survive storms. We didn't rush it, we didn't force it. We just dug our hands into the dirt side by side, sowing 1,000 tiny promises into the earth. Promises to show up, promises to keep climbing, promises to love, stubborn and fierce and wild, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. And when the first tomato ripened red on the vine, Brianna plucked it carefully, cradling it like something holy. She turned to me, eyes shining, and said, "We made this, Mom. Together." I just smiled, heart fuller than any words could hold. Because we really, truly had.